What's happening, rock and rollers? You got Steve Brown from Trixter here, and you are listening and watching the Talking About Rock podcast.
All right, we now have with us singer, songwriter, guitarist, and producer, Steve Brown. Steve, what's going on, man?
How you doing, brother? All right, thanks for having me, and cheers to everybody out there on the worldwide intraweb.
Excellent. Yeah, well, you are a busy guy, man, and you've lived the rock dream, man, being influenced by Van Halen, Kiss, and then becoming friends with Edward Van Halen and co-producing Ace's new album, 10,000 Volts. Did you ever think Jersey guy and you're running the gambit here, man?
It's funny, PJ and I talk about this all the time, and it's a sense to where, look, this was all part of the plan, but I always have to go back to that 8-year-old kid, 1978, in my room in Paramus, New Jersey, when I had Kiss posters and Van Halen posters. I don't even think I had posters at that time. I had Kiss Rock and Roll Over, and I had Van Halen 1, an 8-track, and Kiss Rock and Roll Over. Let me show you this. This will be really cool. So this is the record, and this is the record that completely changed my life forever. And Ace was so nice to sign it for me, and he wrote on it, "Your first kiss." But it never gets lost on me. So yeah, the 8-year-old kid in me, no matter what, dude, I'm still such a fan of this, as you can tell by my studio, which is filled with all great memorabilia and my life experiences in this incredible rock and roll fantasy that I've been blessed with. But yeah, it never gets lost on me. The 8-year-old kid in me would never believe that all these years later, here I am with, I had an incredible relationship with the Van Halen brothers. I'm still friends with Alex, but with Ed, that saying, be careful when you meet your heroes because they're probably going to let you down. Well, both these guys, Ed Van Halen and Ace Frehley, they never let me down. You know what I mean? So it never gets lost on me. But you know what, dude? This was all part of the plan. I didn't get into rock and roll to just do what I did with Trixter back in the 80s and 90s. This was going to be for all my life. I'm a musician, I'm an artist, and this is what I love. It's in my blood, man. I just got back from the road with Trixter Acoustic this weekend, and literally I woke up and ran down to my studio and started working again. This is like what I do. Besides being with my family, this is the only thing I ever really do. I have a couple hobbies to try to occupy my time, but man, I just love every part of this business. Doing an interview with you right now, it means so much to me that you give a shit about me, that you want to even talk to me. But again, brother, it's all part of this fantasy life that it's become a serious reality. But yeah, it never gets lost on me.
So Steve, yeah, tell me, there's another writer from the Amherst, New York area, Dave Julian, I think, is co-writing on this album with you guys too, right? Yeah,
he's up in your neck of the woods, Amherst, New York, Buffalo area dude, and it's a great story with David. Super talented writer. He's been doing a lot of stuff for he wrote for Jack Russell and that Tracy Guns project. He's been doing stuff with the Frontiers. He's become one part of my team now, and was just this crazy story. He sent me a message on Instagram and he said, "Hey man, check out my stuff. I got some great songs. I'm trying to get stuff placed." And this was like right when I started working with Ace. And I listened to his stuff and I'm like, this stuff is fucking great. This is really good. I go, "Dude, what are you doing with this?" He goes, "Man, I'm not much of a singer, but I write, cool music." So I told him, I said, "Well, I'm working with Ace." And I said, "Look, give me something, kind of like, Shock Me, Firehouse. Give me something." Bam. I went to him, bam, bam, ba da da da. And he came back with some ideas. And I'm like, man, this is fucking great. And what we wound up with was a lot of what is 10,000 volts now. And it was just one of those great stories to where David is one of those stories where you never know. Always, for all you artists and writers out there, send your stuff to people, because that's how this guy got me. He sent me an Instagram message, and now he's got two songs, 10,000 Volts and Cosmic Heart, which is one of the killer song on the new Ace record. It was all because the guy sent me a message, and his stuff was so good that I was like, I have to work with this guy. And now he's part of my team, and he's going to be working on everything I do till the day I go. So there you go. But local boy done good. So give it up for David Julian, Buffalo and Amherst, New York.
How you were playing really early when you started Trixter? What I was reading and listening to, you're like 8 or 9 years old. You're starting to listen to Van Halen and Kiss, and
Yeah.
you're like, I'm gonna pick up guitar, I'm gonna do this, man. So how long did you start doing that before you put the Trixter album together?
Well, I mean, so I started playing when I was 8 years old. And, again, it was immediate. It was in my blood. It was in my heart and soul, as it is now. And I was totally encapsulated with it, ensconced with it. I knew everything, like I told Ace and I told Ed this years ago, dude, I knew more about your band and your business probably than you did when I was a little kid. And same with the Def Leppard records, man. I knew who Peter Mensch was, their manager back in 1980, when they were on Through the Night. And
Yeah.
same thing with Kiss. I knew that Wally Mirowitz was their booking agent. I was a 9-year-old kid. I was obsessed with reading the credits. It was
Yeah.
that, I don't know how old you are, dude, but when we grew up, having vinyl records, you would put on the record and you would open it up if it was a double gatefold, or just look at the back. And I knew who Sean Delaney was. Oh, wow, Sean Delaney co-wrote this song. And, the publishing company, the merchandising company, it was all encompassing.
Yeah,
Besides,
you had to get deep back then, right? You had
yeah,
to, read everything on the albums. The only thing we had were some of the different rock magazines coming out, but you didn't have the
exactly.
internet to get all
It
this
was
info.
Totally. It was Circus Magazine, Rock Scene, Hit Parader, and these magazines, that was it. But for me, it was so immediate. So by the time I was about 11 years old, I met a guy who played basketball with me. His name was Mike Payne, and he was the first drummer that I ever met. And I told him, I said, "Hey man, I love Kiss and Van Halen and Cheap Trick, and I got a guitar and an amp, and I think I'm pretty good." And I had a little Big Muff fuzz pedal, so I had distortion, which was really cool, because my first guitar was like one of those Sears guitar amp combos, 6995. I'll never forget getting that. But I went over to Mike's house, and that was the first time I ever played with a drummer. And it was like immediate. That first time plugging in that amp and hearing real loud drums, I think my ears bled for about 30 seconds, because hearing live drums in a room, it was like, whoa, I got to turn my amp up. And I did that, and again, it was one of those life-changing moments. And then I recruited a kid up the street, this kid Doug Cowie, who was the original bass player in Trixter, who lived up the street. And I'm like, I need a bass player, man, and I'm going to teach you how to play bass. So buy a bass, and I'm going to just basically, I knew that a bass was like the lower four strings of the guitar. So I'm like, well, just follow what I'm doing. If we were doing You Really Got Me, you just go third fret, fifth fret, third fret, do 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 do, and that's kind of how Doug learned. So it was the three of us just playing at Mike's house in a garage in Paramus, New Jersey, and it just built from there. And then I met Pete Lauren through his little sister, who was a classmate of mine, and Pete was best friends with another really good friend of mine, Jim DeSalvo, who's no longer with us. Jim mastered, used to mix and master and engineer a lot of the Trixter records, 40-foot Ringo going back. But long story short, when I met Pete, I had talked to him on the phone, and I knew he was into Van Halen in Boston, and he was also 4 years older, and all the chicks would go nuts over him. He was so good looking, man. He was like, played sports. He was like buff, but I was like, if I could get that dude to grow his hair long and teach him how to sing, I could have something. And that's what I did. I called him up one day and I said, "Dude, would you ever think about being a singer?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know how to sing." And I was like, "Don't worry about it, man. I'll teach you." I was 12 years old, man, and I had those leadership skills already. My father was a sports coach and a principal. My father was the vice principal principal of our middle school and of our high school in Paramus. So I had those leadership skills. It was born, it was in my
Right. And
DNA.
that's where you guys played the first time, right? I think that was
Yeah,
your
yeah.
first gig, right?
Eastbrook Middle School, which we have the, we have that show on full video. I had it just professionally transferred. It's unbelievable. So cool. But that was it, man. And it was always that enthusiasm and blind faith that we are going to do this. And dude, in the 80s, it was like we didn't have all the distractions that kids have nowadays. It was either you're playing sports or you're playing music, you're riding dirt bikes I was big with BMX bikes, so we didn't have all these distractions. So it was so, and MTV had just come on the scene, 1981, 82 is when I first got MTV. And it was just, man, we just lived it. I would literally come home from school and sit in front of MTV waiting for
Right.
those 3 live Van Halen videos,
Right. When
so
you could actually watch music on there. Yeah.
oh my God, I know. I talk about that all the time in the Trickster shows. I ask everybody, how many of you people out there actually remember when MTV played videos?
Right.
Like a lot of people, thank God, raise their hands, but we have a lot of young kids, we're so old that we're 3 decades in. So we have, the parents' kids coming to see us now. We've transcended the decades and the age group. So it's so cool. But I tell my daughter, I have a 24-year-old daughter, I said, man, Lily, you would have been great in the 80s because she's a lot like me, she loves music and she's grew up seeing Van Halen. She went to Van Halen shows when she was 3 years old, got to meet Eddie Van Halen, when she was 3. And she goes, all she remembers from that is that, oh, he had a clear guitar. Because at one point he had a clear Wolfgang guitar, plexiglass, and
Right.
she remembers that. But man, growing up in the 80s, it was the best fucking time. It was just magic. And it was all about rock for us. And it was immediate. So we started Trixter. We were originally called Raid. We did the first show at Eastbrook Middle School. We were RADE. And it was sort of a take on the Rock Brigade. We're going to be the Raid Brigade. But that didn't last long. And then I changed the name to Trixter right after that. And that's when our second drummer, Mike, left the band. And then the second drummer joined the band. And we were off to the races. And it was just, a constant building process until 1989 when we got our, record deal. And then, 1988 is when PJ Farley, my brother, what I like to call my man wife, we've been married at the hip by rock and roll for the last 36 years. So it's been one hell of a journey, to say the least.
Yeah. You guys put that album together. You made connections in Jersey. You got added to the rotation for MTV and it just exploded from there for you guys. Like
It
I
did.
remember
Yeah,
that
yeah.
video on all the time. You
Yep.
guys having fun, like you were saying, on your BMX bikes and that. And then people loved it, man. It took
It
off
was
like
you.
crazy.
Yeah, what was so unique about it is we were so different than every other band, and look, man, I love it all. I love the whole 80s hard rock, whatever hair nation, hair band thing, whatever you want to call it. I don't give a shit. It was the greatest genre of rock and roll ever. It was the greatest times. It's when musicians were at their peak, guitar players and drummers and singers. It was all of the stuff of the 60s and 70s, because of course I love, all the 70s rock is where it came from. But Van Halen was the band that really started the whole thing. And then in the 80s, when it was the Def Leppards, the Motley Crues, the Bon
Yeah.
Jovis,
Yeah. Yeah. Van Halen definitely set the standard for everybody when they came out, right? People were blown away by that. And all guitar
totally.
players picked that album up and said, we got to get it together. We got to get our shit together and get this moving. But you've not only had great friendships with Edward Van Halen, you also have a great friendship with like Phil Collins from Def Leppard.
Of
You
course.
guys started
Yeah.
hanging out and you sat in and filled in for Def Leppard shows also.
Yeah, again, it's just been a constant, and like you asked me, did you ever think that this would happen? This was all part of the plan, man. Let's make no mistake. I work my ass off to be who I am, to look, to try to look good at 53 years old. I'm proud to say at 53, I have a 28-inch waist, keep myself in shape. I'm 5 years sober and I'm playing, singing, writing, and feeling my mental and spiritual. Everything in my life is as best as it can be. And I say this a lot and I mean it from the heart. And I said it to PJ. I said, dude, the first 50 years of our life were just the beginning. We're at halftime now, and we are soaring to where we're gonna win the Super Bowl, we're gonna win the Rock World Series at some point. But at the end of the day, and I'm going to pull PJ into this because we've been doing this, and PJ's been doing so many great things over the years, like me playing with Fozzy, with Chris Jericho's band, Lita Ford, and doing all these great solo records. First and foremost, we're musicians, so it never matters if we're playing arenas or stadiums. And on a side note, I don't know if you know too many guys who, two guys from Trixter both played Wembley Stadium. PJ played it just recently with Fozzy, and I did it almost 10 years ago with Def Leppard. That's a pretty cool thing to think. Two guys from New Jersey played arguably one of the biggest and most iconic stadiums in the world. It's really cool. But the point I was trying to make is that the first 50 years were a warm-up for the next 50 years. And this is when I believe we are both going to do our greatest work in this business. So, and again, man, I love every aspect of it. I roll out of bed every day. And of course, being sober now for 5 years, because I was living a pretty, I was living the rock and roll life pretty hard, and it got to be too hard for me and my family and my friends. And I knew I had to stop. And being that I did that, my life has improved 100%. Every day I wake up like that 12-year-old kid when I started Trixter, with such enthusiasm to where I go, what am I doing today? I have right now I'm in my studio, I'm looking at a calendar. I have 6 different projects that I'm mixing and producing, songs that I'm working with different artists, and continuing. And Ace and I we're starting work on the Origins 3, not sure what that's going to be, but his new covers record, duets, we're going to be getting some real heavy duty special guests in on this. But again, this is what it's all about, and just again, so blessed to get to do this every day.
Yeah, definitely. And you're totally right. I mean, now you got to be razor focused. There's so many distractions that are out there now. And yeah, so the new Ace album, you're co-producing that. Tell us a little bit about that. I've heard a couple different stories of how you guys kind of got together. I've heard you talking that your wife kind of was pushing you, saying you got to do something with Ace. I've heard that Eddie might have introduced you guys, or
yeah, no, it was Ace's fiance, Laura,
oh, okay,
a Jersey girl who PJ and I grew up with. She's from a couple towns over. We've known her for 35 years, and she's been one of the greatest things that ever happened to Ace. I can certainly tell you that. But long story short, Ace and I have known each other for 30 years. Eddie Trunk was the first guy who introduced us to Ace back. He was doing a Kiss convention in Jersey that our buddy Richie Rano from Stars was running. And it was right when we came off the road from the first Trixter record. So it was like, oh man, the Trixter guys are here. And we got to meet Ace. We went up to his hotel room and hung out. And Ace is the most honest, sort of the most, how do I say it? He is what he is. He can be a little wild and he can be a little kooky all in the same time, but he's the most honest, genuine, warm-hearted. What you see is what you get with him, and that's give or take. But I appreciate anybody like Gene Simmons, who is, when you meet Gene, he's the same guy. I've known Gene for 35 years. He's the same dude he was when I first met him. His personality, unlike some of the other guys in the band, Paul can be one of those guys where you meet him one day, he's fucking so nice and talking guitars, the next day he walks past you backstage and he acts like he never met you. And that's a constant with him, and that's cool. He's got his issues, but I have no problem with him. But Ace, always been such a nice guy. Fast forward to 2022, my other band, Tokyo Motor Fist, did 3 shows opening up for Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley. I know people say you say his name wrong. Just disclaimer, I've been saying Ace Frehley since 1978. So fuck everybody who who comments and says I'm saying his name wrong. Ace has no problem with it. Is it Neil Peart? Is it Neil Peart? Is it Vinny Appice?
right.
Is it Carmine? And is it Van Halen or Van Halen?
Right.
I've been saying Van Halen since I was a little kid. So,
right, and let's put another thing to rest here. So
yeah,
there's another thing here. Steve Brown. So you're Steve Brown Rocks 1.
Yes.
Not Steve Brown Tesla drummer, which is also a great guy. Right.
And I love Steve, man.
Yeah, I met Steve from Tesla. Yeah, he's a great guy. So we just want to clear that up, make sure people understand that.
And here's another thing. When my ancestors, when they came over from Germany, because I'm a third German, I'm Irish, Dutch, and German. So when they came over from Germany, my original name from Germany, my family was Braun, Braun. My great 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 grandfather, Harry Braun. And when he came over to LSI, and they say, "No, you're not Braun, you're Brown," and they put that sticker on him and said, "Send him on his way." So you could say, "Hey, is it Steve Braun or Steve Brown?" But, again, man, stop with the bullshit about me saying Ace's name wrong. It doesn't fucking matter. I think even Paul Stanley said Ace Frehley lead, Ace Frehley. I've heard them all say Ace Frehley at
Hey,
times.
if you have Ace's seal approval, that's the end of the conversation right there, right?
Yeah. Whatever you want to call us, just don't call us late for dinner. You know what I
Right.
mean? But so we did some shows, and a bunch of people in Ace's organization, his manager John and Phil Dealey, who Phil is Ace's production manager, who used to be PJ's bass tech back in 1990 and 91, a dear friend of us. They were saying, "Dude, we love Tokyo Motor Fist. We love that record you made. You're like the new Mutt Lang, man. You're doing singing and writing. We got to get you and Ace together." And Lara, of course, I sent her a copy of the TMF record, and she was blown away by it. She was a big Trixter fan and loves all the great bands from the 80s and 90s. But long story short, I basically got in my head, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna come up with some ideas that, as a huge Ace fan and a huge Kiss fan, I think I could come up with ideas that would be perfect. That if I go, what would I want Ace to sound like in 2022? So I came up with a couple ideas. The first one was "Walking on the Moon," that down, down, down,
Right.
down, down, down.
Right. And he said he loved that song. He wanted to call the album Walking on the Moon, right?
Well, that was the original thing. So that was the first one. It was "Walking on the Moon," "Fighting for Life," which nobody is, a lot of people haven't heard yet. Those are the first two things that I sent him. And he was immediately like, "Yeah, you got to do this." So the first conversation was after I sent him "Walking on the Moon." I was texting him, and I'm texting Lara, and I'm everybody like, "Dude, listen to what I sent you. Listen." I'm like, "Dude, my time is valuable. I want to get going on this. Let's go. Let's go." Because also, look, man, it's no secret that, Ace's solo records over the last 20 years, there's always one or two great moments on it, and there's a lot of filler. And that's no disrespect, but it's just, man, the people he was working with, I don't think they care as much as I do, because in this age of singles and streaming, everybody goes, "Oh, all you need are one or two good songs and the rest nobody cares." I'm not like that. I'm
That's
like,
not how you sell albums.
if you're making a record, every song has to count. Everything has to be
Right.
great. Doesn't have to be a hit single, but every song, even if it's so let's call it an album track, it's got to be great. So I send Ace these ideas. He finally calls me up. He goes, "Steve, I do my little Ace impression. "Steve, Walking on the Moon. This is great. This is unbelievable. I love this. We're going to call the record Walking on the Moon." And originally the song wasn't Walking on the Moon. It was a different title, but there was a part in it where the tag was, "You got me walking on the moon." And he's like, "No, that's the title of the song. You got to change it. Cut this in." And immediately, like, dude, we didn't even get in the studio and we're already working together. So that goes to show you how quickly and how immediate the chemistry was. Fast forward 5 days later, I'm up at his studio, which he lives about 50 minutes away from me. He's up in, he's in another part of New Jersey, that is the mountains of New Jersey, because that's where I live. I live in a town called Ringwood. And so we get together, and I bring the Pro Tools track, because I don't do demos. Anything that I work on is all, in this age of, digital recording, everything you can record can be used. So I'm definitely like a chef, man. There's no ingredient that gets left unused. I'm like, we're using everything. So a lot of what we used on the original, let's say, work up of the song, Jordan Kanata, who's the drummer in Slaughter now, he played the drums on the song. And it was originally, I just said, "Yeah, man, give me sort of like a John Bonham feel, like give me 2 minutes of that." And I cut it all up and made what is now the finished thing, the finished version of Walking on the Moon. So went up to Ace's. And it was so cool because we started working on it and he goes, all right, let's write some lyrics. I didn't write like the verse lyrics and I left a bunch of holes because I wanted to see what Ace could contribute. So we immediately went to work, wrote the lyrics, and it was done. And I go, Ace, man, you want to do like a rough vocal? And he like looked at me like we were sitting here and he looks over. He goes, I don't like, I'm like, you want to do a rough vocal so you can maybe rehearse or, get used to the song. He looked at me and he goes, I don't rehearse. He goes, let me get up on the mic and you tell me every other couple line what kind of melody to sing and I'm going to do it. And lo and behold, he got up on the mic and what you hear on the record is 98% what we cut that first day. And that just goes to show you again, when he says, and it means so much to me to hear him say it in interviews, that our chemistry was undeniable. It was magic from day one. It truly was because he did 4 vocal takes and I comped those together. And that's, again, what you hear on the record. Now, that night, he was so fired up after we worked. He woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. He came up with a bridge. Ace was very much fixated on, every song has to have a bridge. You got to have a bridge. And I'm like, well, not really. Not every song has to have a bridge, but he woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, came up with this bridge, ran down to his studio, recorded guitar parts, and recorded the vocals that I had a little bit of a task. I had to cut it into the original part. It was a little bit of work, but again, 98% what he did on his own engineering, and he would, because he didn't know how to set Pro Tools to do like what they call pre-roll. So you have like 2 bars to where, so he had to start the thing way back and he would hit record and then run back like here to his vocal mic and sing it and then go back here. And that was like, I was like, dude, that's unbelievable that you did that. But I was like, if you just do this shortcut, you could just stand at your mic and hit record and like you wouldn't have to do that. But that's Ace, you got to give him credit, dude. At 71 years old when we started working on this record, the guy's still engineering and working on his own guitar tracks. But again, from day one, it was immediate. And then a year later, we finally finished this record. And right at the beginning, we looked at each other. He said to me, I want every song to be great. And I was like, thank God. Because I said to him, I looked him in the eye that first day. I said, dude, if you trust me and I trust you and we both work together on this, I guarantee you we are going to make a record that is as good, not better. Nothing's going to be better than the 78 solo record. I know that, we have that out there, that it's as good as the 78 solo record in a sense that it is the best, most consistent 11-song record that Ace has done since the 78 solo record.
Yeah, definitely arguably the best one out of the 4 solo albums, right?
Yeah. So that's really cool. And like I've said, look, man, I put it up there as a Kiss related project because again, that's what, as a fan, and I see your Rock and Roll Over behind you. I love that. And the solo record. As a fan, look, I love Kiss and I loved everything. I still buy everything those son of a bitches do. They got, all of us, they know they got us, man. How much money have we all spent on Kiss? But I will say, this record is the best Kiss-related release since Kiss Revenge. It's the most consistent. It's the best production. Any record. Bruno Ravel, who mixed it, it sounds as good as any Def Leppard record, I'll tell you that. So production-wise, it's the best production Ace has ever had. But for all the Kiss fans, and no, there's no competition here. I love the Kiss guys. I have no problem with them. They're great to me. I'm friends with Tommy and Eric, and I'm friends with Peter and even Vinnie Vincent. I love everybody because I love all things Kiss. But as working with Ace, my goal, and I've said this in interviews, this isn't just for me or for Ace. This is for all the Kiss fans, and it's for all the Ace fans, that you finally get something that you can listen to from track 1 to the last track on the record, which is Stratosphere, the instrumental. You're going to listen to it with a smile on your face. So there you go. My present to everyone out there.
Yeah, it just sounds amazing. The tracks sound great. And Ace has credited you really to doing the heavy lifting on this. Go
Yeah. Well,
were you thinking in your mind a little bit, let's go through your catalog a little bit, let's look at some of the stuff, and obviously let's start with the 78 record because that's when you really hit. Let's go for that
yeah.
stuff. Was that in your mind, like listen to those tracks a little bit? Was that in your mind at all? Say, we're gonna start fresh. You're coming out of the gate, new agent, new album. Let's come out of the gate really, really strong. Was it just that?
It was all that. Again, getting involved. And look, I'm also a manager. A video director, art director. For all my bands, I do all of this. And I've done that with Ace on this, on this new launch. Working with Monarch Heavy, his label has just been incredible and they've been so supportive. But I've helped them. Look, man, when you've been doing it as long as Ace has for 50 years, things get, he's done it all. So it's
Right.
hard to get inspired. I mean, look at the older bands out there and
Yeah.
look at some of the stuff they release. You like go,
Yeah,
gee,
they get in a rut or they're not sure what to do, or the people around them don't have the type of, you know, um, influence and just energy that you bring to it, right?
yeah,
They need that person to boost them back up and not listen to the same old people around them all the time saying, "Oh yeah, you're great, just keep doing what you're doing." No, you need to
yep.
give it some flair, man. You need to give it some panache because music is always changing.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. You hit it on the head. I was someone who looked around at his organization. I brought him to Sullivan Big at Big Time Entertainment, and Ace is doing that, and he's doubling and tripling his live performance guarantees. The guy is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He's a legend. He's an icon, and he deserves all of this. But look, man, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with.
Exactly.
So, there had to be some changes made, and I was certainly glad. And look, let's make no mistake, I'm intimidated by no one in this business. I've been around rock royalty since I was 16 years old. John Bon Jovi on the Slippery When Wet tour arguably was the biggest rock star in the world, who was a friend of ours, who was the first big supporter of Trixter. And then right after that, became friends with the whole Def Leppard, group, organization. I had the biggest manager in the world helping my band, Peter Mensch and Cliff Bernstein, the Def Leppard guys, being around the Metallica guys. And then, of course, meeting Ed and Al Van Halen, my idol. And like, I don't get nervous around people. And I am the most honest person when it comes to looking at somebody in the eye and saying, dude, this sucks. This isn't good. You
Right.
need
They
to fucking
appreciate
change
that,
this.
right?
Well, some of them do, I mean, some of them kind of go, "Who the fuck are you?" And I go, "Hey, man, I'm your biggest fan, and I'm telling you that this sucks." And I'm not just saying this to Ace, because I've said this to, I say this to anybody that I work with, and I hope people would say that to me, But honesty is something that is not in this business. Especially
Right.
with famous people. There's a lot of people. And like, you see some of these people who go out and tour and play, especially lately, it's been over the years, singers, these famous rock singers who can't sing anymore.
Right.
And it's like, dude, what are you doing? You need to retire. But I go, what's the problem with the agent, the managers who are sending these guys out to basically destroy their legacy because they suck so
Right,
bad?
right. You never want to go see a band that you grew up with, that you idolize, and I'm not going to name names of bands, but we all
We don't
know,
have to.
we all
Everybody
know,
knows.
I tell people like, yes, these guys are great. You might don't expect this maybe now. All right. Maybe you don't want to just go see them now because you have this image in your head when you were a kid, when you were a rocker, you're like, they were great. I saw them in their time. I saw them on this tour. Maybe I don't want to see them now, whatever. I don't want to, wash away those memories and like you said, that legend that they created, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, but it is what it is. Look, it's the business that we're in, and it's the old Elvis thing, what they did, what Colonel Tom did to Elvis back in the day. As long as he gets up on that stage and shakes his butt and does whatever, and people pay money, that's the sad reality, man. But it's just horrible because you see these guys and friends of mine. I'm not mentioning names. Friends of mine, people I fucking care about, and they go out and they're dying on stage. And I go, God,
Right.
what are you doing? What
Right.
are you
Right.
doing?
It's time for them to change it up, maybe
You
produce
know,
or look for a new band to put together or something.
and
It's time to change it up.
and how many more millions do you need? Do you really need that money to go out and destroy your legacy? That's where I give credit. Joe Elliott, to me, still to this day, and especially in this day, he is probably one of the top 5 rock singers out there that's still doing it at the top of his game, and he, still fucking killing it real, no lip syncing, no tracks that he's
Yeah.
singing along with,
Yeah.
because
They
we
always
all
put on a
know
great show. They were the only reason I would have went on that.
they're
I
the
went to that
real.
last summer tour. Yeah.
And you know what? They care so much. And I've never seen a vocalist, and I wish other guys would put as much work in as like somebody like Joe Elliott does to keep his voice in shape. He had problems back in 2016 when I was in doing shows, and he really had serious problems, and I was always in touch with him trying to help him because I had vocal surgery. So that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I blew out my voice like 13 years ago. I had surgery and I came back stronger than ever. It was a weight lifted off my voice. So I'm very passionate about it, and I always leave that door open. And I tell people, and I've told some of these guys, and you know who they are, who have a lot of vocal problems lately. And I've told them, I said, dude, call me. I will help you. I know why you can't sing anymore. It's not your voice, it's in your fucking head. But they don't. And that's okay. But Joe Elliott, I have never seen a guy work harder to get his voice back and come back bigger and stronger than he has. And Def Leppard, look, man, there's no mistaking. Look at the stadium tour. Look at the difference in the performances of the bands. And everybody knows Motley's on backing tracks and whatever, man. I'm not even going to get into that. But Leppard is the real deal, and that's
Yeah.
why when it's
Yep.
all said and done, they're going to be in the history books up there with all the greats, because
Yeah.
they are the real deal.
Yeah, they are the real deal. They always put on a great show. I always tell everyone you're not going to be disappointed. Go and see Def Leppard ever. I've saw them 5 different times back in the day, 3 times this time. I was amazed. Okay, I didn't know what to expect, but I was
Yeah.
amazed. It was great. These other guys, I'm like, yeah, I don't know if you want to go see them. It's up to you if you haven't seen them. But you've played with so many different folks. Now you're putting together an acoustic thing with Trixter. Doing some shows with Mr. Big. Tell
Yes.
us about working with, you work with Eric Martin from Mr. Big. Tell us how you got all that rolling.
Well, this goes back to, decades. We were always huge Mr. Big fans from the first record. Even going back, I remember when I saw the Eric Martin band, that first, Sucker for a Pretty Face on MTV. I was like, wow, this is cool, man. I love that band. As it turned out, that was Troy Lucetta from Tesla and Eric. And then when Mr. Big, came out, of course, it was Billy Sheehan, our buddy Billy, big bad Billy Sheehan from Buffalo, New York, on bass. We were huge. PJ was a huge Talus fan, as I was. And, when he joined the Eat 'em and Smile David Lee Roth band, we were all
Oh,
there
oh
watching
yeah,
it.
just blew up,
Mind
right?
blowing, and seeing Billy. And Billy is, one of my favorite people in rock and roll, just such a cool dude. I actually saw him, Paul, and Nick the other day. PJ and I were flying to Nashville. We got in the airport. We're, going to get our rental car. And who comes walking up? Billy, Paul, and Nick. They were flying to Houston for the beginning
Yeah,
of the.
we were trying to get them on, but Billy's just so busy, and
Yeah.
Eric's been busy. We were trying to get them on. I'm like, Bill, who do you got? He goes, well, maybe Steve will stop by. I'm like, all right,
Yeah, of
cool.
course. So the Mr. Big love goes back, to 3 decades now. But long story short was our singer Pete he loved that Lean Into It record so much. And when we were on tour with Trixter, we listened to that record every day and night in the tour bus. We were all just so in love with it, and we loved Eric's voice. Pete idolized Eric. And so we were playing on the Blood, Sweat, and Beers Warrant and Firehouse tour. We were playing San Jose, I believe it was California, and we got in touch with Eric's management. We knew some people, and we invited him down the show. And he came to our show, and it was like, dude, within 5 minutes of meeting him, he was one of us. He was a brother. We have this thing, like PJ and I, we had this line that we always say, he's one of us. You can tell when you meet somebody. First time I met Ed Van Halen, I was like, he's one of us. because he was always just so warm and just like kind of just like me, man, just a normal dude, and I tell people this all the time. Ed and I bonded over funny jokes. It wasn't about me going, "Hey Ed, can you teach me how to play? What'd you do on
Right,
the one?"
right,
You don't
right.
want to hear that shit. We bonded over talking about stupid TV shows and funny movies and just human stuff.
Right.
But Eric was a brother from day one, and we just immediately hit it off with him. Him and Pete became really good friends. But over the years, we would do shows with Eric when he was doing solo stuff. Eric, our band, PJ and I had 40 Foot Ringo. We did a bunch of shows with the Eric Martin Band in the early 2000s. And we always just kept in touch. And he was a fan of 40 Foot Ringo, and we loved his solo stuff. Fast forward to like 2016, we get a call from him, and said, "Hey man, would you guys want to come to Japan with me? I'm looking to put together a little band, and I'm going to do this weird sort of, I'm not really going to do Mr. Big stuff. I'm going to do stuff from my Eric Martin solo career, all the different decades." And we put together this killer show. It was me and PJ and Rich Scanella, who's in Tonic now, the drummer for Tonic. He was also the fill-in drummer for Bon Jovi for a little bit. He filled in for Tico Torres. He's a Jersey guy. So we went over to Japan, and it just basically solidified how much we love each other. Because look, all the kidding aside, when you're out on the road all the time, playing music is 2 hours of your time. It's the other hours of hanging out with people and
Right.
being around people. That's how you get gigs.
Right.
Because I didn't get the Def Leppard gig because maybe I'm such a great performer or what. Yeah, a great player, a singer, and a performer, and I look kind of cool on stage, but it's the hang aspect.
Right. That's what every musician says. If you can't
Yeah,
hang out and talk with these guys about normal conversations, about things you have in common, about funny, weird shit, doesn't matter. If there's
exactly.
not a connection as a human, that doesn't make it.
Totally. Joe Elliott and I, man, we bonded over more than music or anything was our love for the movie Caddyshack because he can recite every line from that movie. I think he knows more about that movie than I do. And we just every day, that's all we would do. I'd keep playing. I don't think the heavy stuff's gonna come down for quite some time. Doing the Bill
Right.
Murray impressions and
Right.
Danny Noonan, Judge Schmales. But
Yeah.
that was really it. So with Eric, that's how that happened. And then we started doing shows as the Eric Martin Band. And then it became Eric Martin featuring Trixter because we were doing like a Mr. Big Trixter greatest hits show. And so again, and then in 2013, I finally got to play a gig with Billy Sheehan where I did the Eddie Trunk 25th anniversary party where at the Hard Rock in New York, where I got to play two Van Halen songs with Billy Sheehan, Mike Portnoy, and Mark Tornillo, who's a Jersey guy who was in the great band TT Quick, Jersey Legends, and now is the singer in Accept. And that was the first time I got to play with Billy, man. And I never forget, man, getting when we went up for sound check and did sound check and playing the songs. And Billy just was shaking his head like, because I had my Ed, Van Halen guitar. And, if I want to play the Van Halen style, I can do it pretty good. I'm not one of these note for note guys, but the spirit is there and the vibrato and the sort of reckless abandon. I can do that. I don't do it note for note as good as somebody like, let's say, Pete Thorne or, how Russ Parrish, when he was doing the Atomic Punks, can do it. But when
Right.
it comes to doing an Ed thing, I can do it really good in that sense. And Billy just grabbed me and gave me a big hug. And I was just like, I can't fucking believe this. This guy was in David Lee Roth, and he was almost in Van Halen.
Right.
You
That's what he told us on the show. He was like
Yeah,
caught
man.
between that. He wasn't sure what to do. And when Dave asked him to join, he couldn't tell. And Ed was like, "Well, if you're having a meeting with Dave, you better tell us what happens." And he didn't. He went and he didn't tell Ed for a while, and he felt
Yeah,
bad
yeah.
about that. And he finally got all that taken care of with Ed. But yeah, to be caught in the middle of that, what do you do, right? I'm going to join Van Halen. I'm going to be with David Lee Roth. Wow, what's
It
that
was,
choice?
yeah. Well, it was, again, man, those guys, the Van Halens, they loved Billy, and I know some stuff that I'm not at liberty to talk about, but either way, it's so cool. So Mr. Big, again, our love, the Trickster Mr. Big love is no secret. We've been such fans. And so finally, February 10th at the Rome Capitol Theater, the worlds unite, the Trickster and Mr. Big. We finally get to play with them, and it's going to be one hell of a night, you know, because we're doing with the Trixter acoustic thing. And disclaimer on that, it's Trixter semi-acoustic. Because if you see the clips, I'm playing my SBS guitar. I'm using an acoustic simulator, but it still rocks. You know, anybody who has any ideas, it's not me and PJ sitting on stools
Right.
playing, you
Yeah.
know,
People have
playing.
been asking me about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
no, it still rocks. You know, we have our good buddy Ben Hands, who's done gigs with Kip Winger and with Eric, and he's doing shows with Anthony Corder from Tora Tora and Tony Harnell from TNT that they're doing acoustic shows. Ben is our utility guy who's adding, you know, making it rock a little bit more. So, and we've been doing the Trickster acoustic thing for about 2.5 years now, and we are having the times of our lives doing this because it's a new way of playing these great songs, you know, and showing it in more of a stripped down version. And the thing I'm most proud of, you get to see three musicians up on the stage, no backing tracks, three vocalists, me and PJ especially, doing these harmonies, and we're singing at the top of our game. None of the songs are detuned, they're all in the original keys, and it's 100% real vocals.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, we so look forward to seeing you guys play that. We're so happy they booked a Mr. Big show, you know, near us out here. It's
Yeah,
fabulous, man. And the new Ace Frehley album sounds amazing, man. Great luck on all that. We look forward to more
thank
dates,
you.
and I think Ace is going to be coming to Rome, New York, coming up. So
He
we're
is.
looking forward to that show too.
In April, yeah, he's going to be there. And again, we're putting together. I'm actually going up to Aces tomorrow to rehearse with him, and you know, he's really putting the time in, and he's got a whole new show, you know, set list and stuff for 2024. So fans, get ready. You're gonna see a reborn, re-electrified, and Ace Frehley filled with 10,000 volts, but 10,000 volts of great energy and positivity.
That's amazing. That's what we all look forward to that, man. So just
Yeah.
in closing here, man, what any advice do you have for young guitarists, young artists starting out, man? What would you tell them nowadays?
Well, it's like me. Play music, become a musician, a guitar player, a singer, whatever you want to be, a bass player, drummer, because you love music. The odds of you becoming a rock star are slim to none. But if you do something that you truly love and you have a strong, thick skin, because in this day and age of the internet comments where everybody around the world has a say in what it's funny, man, reading the comments of, 98% of it is great for Ace, but you see these idiots who are just saying the stupidest stuff in the world,
Right.
like, just stop.
Yeah.
But that's the world we live in. What I
Yeah.
tell everybody, people ask me all the time, oh, my kids want to get into music. And I tell them the first thing, don't get into music because you want to become a rock star or you want to be famous. Get into music for the right reason, that you love music and that you're going to practice and you're going to try to be the best you can be. Because going back when I was a little kid, my parents, my father especially, he was a big sports guy, my brothers, it was all about, my father always said, whatever you do in life, just do the best you can and be the best you can be. And you can't lose. And that's all I've ever done, is just be the best that I can be and try to show everybody that, you know what, this is possible. And just enjoy the ride because, look, man, if you can make money and have a career playing music, it's the greatest job in the world, you know?
Yeah, definitely great advice. Great advice. Well, man, like I said, we look forward so much to see you guys. Rome, New York, February 10th, Mr. Big, Trixter Acoustic Show. It's going to be amazing. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, and I'll see you at the show. And cheers, everybody. Rock and roll.